Hey everyone, Chris here. Just a quick programming note. When I went to go edit the Zoom audio for this episode, the last 5 minutes were really distorted and garbled. It was something that happened with Zoom that I could not control, and I don't know how it happened. It has never happened before. I hope it doesn't happen again. So I went ahead and cut most of that. I did keep about a minute and a half. It's the wrap up to our conversation about Badlands. I wanted to make sure we had a clean break there. So you will notice the last minute and a half get a little garbled and distorted. You can feel free to turn it off at that point. I think we've given a good summation of our thoughts on the movie by that point. But if you want to keep listening just for completion, I'm sorry for your ears. The stuff I cut out, it was basically Perry and I telling you where you can find us online. So you can follow Perry on Twitter at Perry Loves Film. You can listen to him on Ann Arbor Radio every Friday on the Lucy Ann Lance Show. You can find me on Twitter at Mere Christianity. You can also find my newsletter, Criticisms, that is on Substack. Everything is in the show notes. Feel free to subscribe, give us a listen, follow us on other platforms. I also did want to let you know we have some fun things coming up in the next few weeks. In 2 weeks, we will conclude our series on movies of the 70s. We'll be talking about Michael Cimino's The Deer Hunter, and I'm really excited about that one. We will follow that up with a fairly lengthy miniseries on the films of Robert Altman. That's a huge blind spot for me. Perry is very excited to introduce me to many of Altman's films, so that will be fun. We are going to probably have some special fun stuff throughout the rest of the year as well. There's some movies I know we want to take some time out and tackle, so thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Badlands is a very fun film to talk about. You know I've mentioned Malick on here before, so I hope you love this episode, and we will be back in 2 weeks to talk The Deer Hunter.
This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to
We're Watching Here. We're watching here.
That actually shook my computer. Wow, that was great. That was great. No, don't
I
apologize for that.
It's just been pent up for a month. I've been missing this.
Don't apologize, because this is Opinionated Movie Talk with Chris and Perry. My name is Chris. With me, he is the kit to my Holly, Perry Seibert. How you doing? He's the most beautiful man I've ever seen, except maybe for James Dean.
I can hear those plunky little strings in the background, that score the entire time.
How are you doing, Perry?
I'm good. How are you doing, Chris?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. It's been a while since we've recorded, but I think it's only been 2 weeks since the last episode dropped. So if you guys haven't heard our Once Upon a Time in Hollywood novel discussion, go back and listen to that when you're done here. Today, I am very excited. We are continuing our series on movies from the 70s. We are talking Terrence Malick's 1973 debut, Badlands, and I'm looking forward to talking about that. But Perry, first, as always, what have you been watching?
So I have a very special What Are We Watching, Chris? Tonight, as soon as I finish recording this with you, I will be sitting down with my oldest daughter to watch the final episode of the original ABC run of Twin Peaks with her for the first time. This will be at least, I don't know how many times I've watched just the finale, but this is interesting. We've been going through it. It's the first time she's seen it all. And it's the first time I've seen it since the Showtime series.
Okay.
And what has been most impressive is how much of that second season, which people like to crap on and be dismissive of, is actually really kind of dealt with in the Showtime series.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying the second season is necessary. I don't know what of Twin Peaks is necessary, honestly. But if you're a fan, I forget how much certain things really matter that will end up mattering later. And that was an interesting way to see, because I don't think I'd watched it until just before the Showtime series, which is the last time I rewatched the season 2. And so seeing it again with the foresight or hindsight of what's coming, it was an interesting watch. I was glad I went back through it.
Interesting. I have never seen Twin Peaks. I was a little young for it when it came out. I was probably, I was a preteen when that show was airing. But it's been one of those ones kind of like X-Files that I've been like, I should probably get around to that sometime. And it's probably a little easier to binge than X-Files, which has like 2,000 episodes or something.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no. You can't, I would not take this as one giant horse pill.
Okay.
You don't want to binge these. You don't want to watch 6 episodes of Twin Peaks in a row.
Okay.
It's not a good idea.
Okay. But it's been on my list. I'm curious. I know that was one of the first shows to start like really being serialized. And since then, obviously, that's all TV is at this point. How does your daughter like the show? Has she been into it? Does it?
So it's interesting. She's not she's not nearly the Lynch file I am. And actually, we're going to take a break between this and watching the Showtime stuff. There are a few films of Lynch's I needed her to see before we do the Showtime stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. In fact, if we go back, how many years ago did we do our legacy episode? I talked about it on that episode. The last thing I really wanted to show Emma that I hadn't yet was Blue Velvet.
Okay.
And that's going to be the first thing we watch when this chunk of Twin Peaks ends. I want to watch Blue Velvet. We'll watch the Twin Peaks movie, Fire Walk with Me. And then I wanted to see Mulholland Drive because I wanted to see how important Naomi Watts is to David Lynch before we get to the Showtime stuff, because she's always fantastic in the Showtime season of Twin Peaks. She's a fan. She's staying with it. She's enjoying it. She takes it for what it is. It's not, it's a series that did not care to make sense in any sort of narrative logical way. Mm-hmm. and she's comfortable with that. She's fine with that. It is so very stylish isn't even the word to me, because that seems like it's trying to have a style, and it is, but it's something so much more than that. It's like the Wes Anderson thing. It's an aesthetic. It's not a style. Yeah. There's more to it than that. It's a commitment to a particular look and feel. And what is fascinating is that, again, going through it again, is how that has altered for Lynch over time. That, Fire Walk with Me is a very different beast than the ABC Twin Peaks, and the Showtime series is very different from both the movie and from the ABC series, while certainly being part of it. Like, not so different that you're like, I can't believe this, but it's different. It's not the same thing. They are wrestling with different big themes, and the original series is the only one that's really truly funny. The movie isn't funny at all, outside of a couple of laughs. The movie is a rough sit, and the Showtime series has some huge laughs in it, but it's like they stop to do the laughs. They're not integrated. We're gonna stop and have this funny scene so that you have some laughs with this, and that's not to knock. I'm simply saying that's how it's structured. But the whole thing's worth going through at some point. Yes, I have a hard time saying it's necessary. It really is a very odd series for network television. Truthfully, it is stunning that it became a thing. Going back to it, you will be surprised. I'm trying to fathom what it would be like to see it for the first time. I lived with it for 25 plus years at this point. I know that series 30 years. Wow. Yeah, sure indeed. 30 years. And, Lynch has too. He's been thinking about it this whole time, and you can tell during the Showtime series.
Okay. I will have to add that to my queue eventually and get around to that. I know my wife tried it when it was added to Netflix, and it weirded her out within like the first 2 episodes. She's like, I'm out. And
yeah, the first episode really is so tonally odd, and so much crying. There's so much crying in the pilot episode of Twin Peaks. There's nothing but crying, Chris. Lots of crying. Everybody is very sad that Laura has been murdered. There's lots of crying. and to the point where it's like, wow, there's a lot of crying. And yet, Kyle MacLachlan shows up and makes you feel you're very happy to spend time, because he's his evocation of an FBI lawman is one of the most beautiful and likable things in the history of television.
I will definitely get around to that one day. Lynch is a bit of a blind spot for me in some areas, actually a lot of areas, but I have seen Mulholland Drive, and I really liked that, and so I need to get around to him.
Well, I will tell you that it has led us to Every Day Now. I don't know if you since I'm assuming you haven't. Lynch, a few, maybe it was actually during lockdown last year. It might stretch to before that. He does a daily weather report.
Oh yeah,
and the daily top 10 draw, the 10 numbered balls draw every day on his YouTube channel. And you know what? If you got 2.5 minutes to kill, you could do worse than to check this out every day. It's pretty good viewing.
All right, maybe I'll check those out too. I have not been watching a lot. It's funny, before we started recording, I was telling you how much I have not watched. August was just a crazy busy month. Work was busy. We had some trips going on, things like that. So I looked back at my letterbox, and in the last month, so first part of September and then all of August, I have watched 5 movies, Perry. 5.
All right.
I often am 20 or 30 in a month. 20 in a month is not unheard of. 5. Yeah. I will read those to you because it's a quick list, except I will leave off the one that I will talk about. Okay. I should also note, part of that's also that I am really committed to finishing The Sopranos before Many Saints of Newark comes out, or before it leaves HBO Max is kind of what I'm committed to. So by the end of October, I want to have seen all of The Sopranos. And you talk about not taking all the entire horse pill at once. Wow. I'm in. I just finished season 3 this week.
And so you got a bit.
Yeah, I got a bit. And I asked a critic on Twitter, I'm like, can I see the movie without having finished the show? He's like, at the point you're at, finish the show if you can. He's like, and so I think it's doable, but it's not whether it's doable or not. It really is how I feel about myself when I'm done with it. It is a dark show, but oh my God, it's been so good to watch. And maybe in October we will devote some time to Many Saints of Newark. And
I think we should.
Because I am greatly enjoying that, but that has taken up a lot of my time. But so the movies I have watched, Badlands, which we are going to talk about tonight, obviously. I watched The Suicide Squad, James Gunn's DC movie, which I saw and I enjoyed. It was fine. I didn't jump on the giant praise that I saw everyone latching onto it with, but I thought it was fine. It was the most expensive trauma movie ever made, and I
think it's the exact right amount of praise to say it's the best of the modern DC films.
I think that is
the correct amount of faint praise.
Yep.
Yes.
So I saw The Suicide Squad. I did watch a few weeks ago. My wife was gone, my kids were gone, so I pulled up Netflix and for whatever reason watched Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which
for the first time in how long?
Oh gosh, it was 20 years maybe. Wow. It's not something I've probably revisited the first one several times in that period. And I like Terminator 2 a lot, but I like the first one a lot more. But Terminator 2 is just, that is a movie that's just, it works. It's fun. It's good. I saw Shang-Chi. I took my son to see Shang-Chi. It is, it's the hamburger you like from Marvel. So, it's exactly what I expect from Marvel, what I like from Marvel. It's probably what people don't like from Marvel. But the one that I want to talk about a little bit is one I've mentioned here on the podcast that I wanted to get around to. So last year I started a revisit of all of Steven Spielberg's films. And I put it on hold when they moved West Side Story back, because I'm like, I wanted this to coincide with going through West Side Story. So I've started that back up. And it was taking me a while to get around to following up Color Purple, just because I knew there's some stuff coming that's going to be a bit of a slog.
Yeah.
Empire of the Sun was always the one that I had meant to get around to at some point. But it was either hard to find for a bit. I didn't have the time for it, or I had other things to watch. So I did finally sit around. I think maybe the same day I watched Terminator 2, actually. I think I watched it earlier in the day.
Long movies.
There was probably a pizza break in there or something. But so I finally did watch Empire of the Sun. And I really liked it. I think it is, when we talked about Color Purple briefly, I think I said Spielberg, he was not the filmmaker who was ready to tackle that subject at that point. And I think for many reasons, he was the wrong person to tackle that novel, period. I think that was his attempt to kind of say, I'm a serious artist, pay attention to me. And I like a lot of the Color Purple. There's a lot of stuff that I think fumbles. I think Empire of the Sun is the one where he began to make that transition a little bit more successfully. I think it is a movie that fits his themes much better than Color Purple. It is a movie about separation from family, which is a theme Spielberg likes. He is very enamored with World War II and airplanes. And that is, this is a love letter to World War II airplanes. I had not been aware how big of a movie this was. In my mind, this was a small movie, but this is a epic scope. I mean, David Lean almost directed this movie. And it works. And I think it's very emotional, but I think he shows some restraint when he needs to. I think Christian Bale is fantastic. It is one of the best childhood performances I've seen. John Malkovich is very good in it as well. I was Ben Stiller. I was halfway through The Sopranos through this, and Joe Pantoliano shows up in this small
Joey
role.
Pants.
Yep. And that I'm always very happy when he shows up to that. So yeah, I really liked Empire of the Sun. It kind of put the fire back in me. I should have a review of that up in my newsletter in either the next one or the one after this. So it's got me psyched up for always.
Ooh,
yeah.
Let's just. I feel need to jump in. Not that I agree. I think it's a very good film. I think it's one of Spielberg's best movies. And it is one of the few that truly kind of feels personal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Not that it is. That's not his story at all.
Yeah, it's someone else's true story.
It's a really good film. Have you ever seen Hope and Glory?
I don't know that I have seen Hope and Glory.
Okay, so I would strongly encourage you to see John Borman's Hope and Glory, which is another film about World War II seen from the eyes of a child. And I think that it is, for my money, the best part of Empire of the Sun is actually I prefer the first act, the second and third. Mm-hmm. I like being in that kid's world. And Hope and Glory is just that. Hope and Glory is really about what it was like to be 8 years old when World War II was going on.
Okay.
And it stays there. It doesn't have any interest in giving you a wider lesson. I mean, the stuff's there. It's very clear that, the kid does not understand everything that's going on. You get what's going on, but you only experience it as the kid sort of experiences it. And it is autobiographical. I mean, Borman really did make a film about what it was like for his childhood experience during World War II. And it is a really great film. And it's just the next year. I think it was out in 1988. It was a Best Picture nominee.
Same year, actually, 1987.
Is it the same year?
Yep.
They are peas in a pod, and Hope and Glory is really spectacular. I can't recommend that film enough. So very cool. that's my little add that to your list. When you get around, when you want to wrap up some more World War II stuff that doesn't have that Spielberg vibe.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up the Spielberg vibe, because the one false note the movie hits for me is its final shot when he just can't resist, falling back into the mom's here, everything's okay. Which that I was kind of like, wow, he's not going to sentimentalize that, and then he does, and it's Spielberg. He's going to Spielberg. So
he is Spielberg all over that. Yes, he is.
So we're going to move on from Steven Spielberg to another one of his contemporaries who came out about the same time, and we're going to talk about Terrence Malick, who is a filmmaker we've talked about a few times on here, because I think Tree of Life, I definitely came up in my best of the decade. I think it was the top of my best of the decade.
I believe it was
when we did that. And A Hidden Life was on my top 10 list in 2019. Tree of Life is one of my 5 favorite movies of all time. I enjoy it. I had not seen Badlands, which is Terrence Malick's 1973 debut. It stars Sissy Spacek and Martin Sheen as young lovers who hit the road and kill people, which was a popular theme in movies at that point. So I watched this a few weeks ago. It was on HBO Max for a bit. It like hit the right window. It was on HBO Max at just the right time.
Perfect.
And so, yeah, I guess to kick this off is Perry. How the hell is this a debut film?
It's good. Yes. That's a valid question. I would agree. Yes, this is a film in which you see I've always said it's my favorite Malick film, and I think it's the best Malick film. And I say that because for me, it is the one time where you sort of you feel him discovering this, like he has found his voice and he's figuring out what he can do with it. And for me, starting with the very next film, Days of Heaven, which I actually like. I think Days of Heaven is good. But even by Days of Heaven, it's starting to calcify. Like he's stuck in it. He's gonna commit to this, whether he needs to or not. And Badlands does not feel like, to outright steal Pauline Kael's great line about mid 70s Stanley Kubrick. Malick oftentimes doesn't feel like he's taking pictures to make movies. It feels like he's making movies to take pictures. Mm-hmm. And you don't get that feeling at all in Badlands.
No.
Badlands still has 2 people at its center. One especially, the Sissy Spacek character, who, her voiceover is one of the all-time great movie voiceovers. You understand how unreliable a narrator she is right from the top. You understand also why she would be drawn to this, as you so aptly put it, sub James Dean presence in her life suddenly. It's a really, really good, it's a great first film. Yeah. And I always wish that Malick, it makes me regret that Malick couldn't have held on to more of it over the rest of his career.
Well, I think what he just got more interested in being a poet, almost, like, not to say Badlands is very poetic,
Absolutely.
He got really wrapped up in the ethereal, I guess is the best way to say it. Like,
yes,
by the time you get to Tree of Life, like, you can't really, like, Tree of Life has a story. There you can piece together a story, but you have to cut through the voiceover. You have to cut through all the whimsy to kind of piece together what's going on. It clouds the whole thing, which I like. To me, I like that very spiritual, approach to it. It works for me. Badlands, the story is there. But the depth is also there. It's funny. I watched it, and I remember thinking, we can talk about this for a half hour. There's enough here to talk about for a half hour. But you keep coming back to it, and I kept thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know if a half hour is enough. I mean, this is a deep movie. This says so much about America. I mean, it is a movie about America. It's a movie about our attraction to violence, but it's about youth. It's about innocence. It's about, like many Malick movies, it's about nature and how it is bigger and lasts longer than any of us. Everything that's been in his past few films is seated right here.
Absolutely.
It's funny. You watch some films from directors who went on to make masterpieces and stuff, and you go back to their first films, and you would have never guessed that. What was it that what did Coppola do right before Godfather? Wasn't it like a Leprechaun movie or something?
The Rain People and I'm blanking.
Finian's Rainbow, or yeah.
Yes.
That's not the Godfather, No. But with Malick, you look at Badlands, and it's the only thing that isn't fully formed there for him is that the technology that he would later use in like Tree of Life and stuff to get these big, swirling, twirling pictures isn't quite, it's not there for him to do that. The movie, though, is him. It is.
Oh, very much.
That is him. Yes. Yeah, God, young Sissy Spacek is so good in this. Yeah, where do you want to start on this one?
Oh gosh, anywhere. Yeah, let's start with Sissy Spacek and Martin Sheen giving spectacular. This is the other thing that's missing from me for Malick. Nobody performs in Malick films anymore. They're photographed.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. There are scenes in this movie. There are dramatic scenes where somebody wants something and tries to get it and fails or succeeds. And because of what they did, that leads to the next thing that happens. There is a traditional narrative drive, which doesn't exist anymore in Malick and hasn't for quite some time. There is in Days of Heaven, his next film, but we've abandoned that by the time we get to The Thin Red Line, and certainly by the time we get to Tree of Life. You can tell me there's a story there, and yes, I can go back and recreate events, but there's not a story in the sense that this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and that's why I keep watching.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's what I'm saying. People now are photographed by him. They don't act. And it's so great to watch Sissy Spacek and Martin Sheen play with each other in this. They are great. Martin Sheen is such a fabulous actor, and truly has only got, like, I'm thinking of somebody like Roy Scheider, who is also a great actor, and they just didn't get that many shots to dominate something. And every time they did, they were fantastic. Mm-hmm. They're fantastic. Roy Scheider owns all that jazz. Martin Sheen owns this film and owns Apocalypse Now. Thankfully. Yeah, and that's really why, as we've talked about many times over the years, I'm a sucker for actors. So yes, give me a director that visual with a couple of actors who he wants to work with and have them actually act in his movie. That's probably the reason this is my favorite Malick film.
That's fair. That's fair. And they're fantastic performances. To the point, it took me by surprise, because my first instinct when I'm watching this is I'm like, why is Holly so passive? She's not getting upset about the death she's seen. She's just, that's the whole point. This aloofness towards death, this kind of where it's there, but they're not affected by it. And, you think about, we're coming out of Vietnam at that point, and it's this whole American psyche, but it was so fascinating to see, because I'm like, why is this character just so passive? I'm like, oh, because she's a teen this isn't quite real for her. This is her, right. This is her fairy tale. And that starts falling apart. And what I love is what Tricky does is throughout the movie too, and it starts coming a little more rapidly near the end. Holly will be speaking in voiceover, and she will tell us something. And what we see on the screen directly contradicts that. Yeah. And you get the sense that she's romanticized this life she has that is not romantic at all. But the way he captures the way their love is kind of souring, and they're growing distant from each other, because that's what happens when the fairy tale starts ending, when it becomes real. And it just captures these two who, they've got a wedge between them, and he doesn't ladle it on. There's not like a huge fight between them. It's just in the subtle way he has them say one thing, shows us another, and it's very impactful. God, the violence in this movie really surprised me. It's stark. It's very just matter of fact, and it shocked me when it had occurred.
Well, the other reason I really love it is very much not a continuation and not quite an answer, but something else to Bonnie and Clyde. It's only 6 years removed from Bonnie and Clyde. It's not that long at all. And it is very much, thinking like a studio head, not 1973, but a regular studio head. Yeah, that's why you greenlight this. Somebody says, yeah, I could do Bonnie and Clyde, but, even hipper. And not hip in the incredibly stylish way that Bonnie and Clyde was trying to be hip and did capture it quite effectively, but in a very in a way that we would later call very Malick. Mm-hmm. he's got a very distinct aesthetic that he wants to work in, and he finds it here, and he works it, like you're saying, beautifully. It is. All of his themes are right here. And, in addition to all of the gorgeous cinematography and the absolutely wonderful editing rhythms that just keep you sort of hypnotized throughout all this, he actually puts people in it.
Yeah.
Which even Bonnie and Clyde kind of falls short of comparatively. Those characters are hip and cool. There is a coolness to the coldness of that movie. And this isn't cool. Badlands isn't cool. It's something else. It's art. It's not trying to be hip. It's trying to be this very unique and distinct thing, and pulls it off beautifully.
Well, I even think the next year Spielberg would do Sugarland Express.
Yep.
Which, very similar. It's a road movie about a young couple who is committing a crime. And it has similar themes in the fact that, it plays with how our country is very, we're very drawn to violence. We like to mythologize our outlaws and stuff. And that the two people at the center of it are out of their depth. Like that's a very similar theme. Spielberg wants to be that cool filmmaker. He turns it into a smash and chase movie in the last half hour that to me kind of ruins the things I like about the movie. And Malick's 30 years old when this comes out. And this is a movie by someone who is like very concerned with the soul and very concerned with philosophy. Yeah, he was a philosophy major, and you can see it. He is someone who is, curious about why do we have these outlaws in our nation's history who we are drawn to? We are a nation of violence. By the end of the movie, Kit's a celebrity, and he loves that. And, the people who are arresting him love him. And that's America. That's still America all these years later.
And it gets that even without that being the point. Like we have there's that fantastic scene where they hole up inside the millionaire's house for a while, and Kit discovers the dictaphone, delivers that fantastically insane monologue about his advice for everybody. He's already self-mythologizing.
Yeah.
It's that trait. It's not just that, America celebrates and holds these people up. It's not just, the media doing this. It's not, we talk about Dog Day Afternoon. It's not just that. It's not, which is what happens in Sugarland Express. It's not that. He's getting at something even more deep that, he's pointing out the insanity of someone who is that much of a killer is already self-mythologizing. And that the danger of, okay, how easily does that get wedded to this culture's need to mythologize and to have, I don't even want to call him heroic, because I don't think he is a hero.
Oh no.
In this, even he's a celebrity.
Yes.
And that's something else.
Yes.
that's something else entirely, which is another layer of what Malick's doing here that makes this a really, like you said, this is the work of a philosophy student.
Well, and I love how, I love just how there are moments of just, I don't want to say whimsy, that's the wrong word, but they will stop and build a house in the forest. They will let a balloon go. Like just these moments that seem very innocent and playful. And then there are two people who are going and killing people.
Don't discount the influence of this film on Wes Anderson.
Oh, I was actually gonna bring up Jeffrey Overstreet, who's a critic I like. I read his review of this on Letterboxd, and he said, very obvious this was a huge influence, particularly on Moonrise Kingdom.
Yes,
visually a big. It's very reminiscent.
Yes, there are. Yes, I'm sure Wes watched this a few times.
Moonrise Kingdom is not as good as that. I like Moonrise Kingdom quite a bit, but I mean, it's not this.
It's not a work of philosophy.
No, I mean, the sequence where they burn down the home and he focuses on the dollhouse burning, and you realize that is Holly's innocence. Like that's the end of that, and it's just,
to explain it seems to take some of the punch out of it. But I mean, we're a podcast. We're not a visual medium.
Exactly.
So we got to do that. But it's so interesting. It really is a movie that stuck with me in ways I didn't even think it would when I was watching it. Like when you're watching it, it does it. Tree of Life. Again, I love Tree of Life, one of my top 5 favorite movies. You watch Tree of Life, though, and Tree of Life is constantly telling you that Malick has set out to make the greatest movie ever made. Like that is a movie that is constantly telling you this is the be all end all of cinema. And it's not, but I like it a lot. Badlands isn't that. This is, like you said, this is someone figuring out how to make his like he's figuring out how to make a movie on the fly. And because he's raising the money for himself, he's getting investors in this. He doesn't have to play by the rules you would normally have. He can make his movie.
And it's still a studio movie. Let's be real clear.
Warner Brothers picked it up because this was a fact I learned. Warner Brothers picked it up and put it on a double bill with another movie. And do you know what that movie was, Perry?
73?
Yep.
Gosh. No. I don't.
Well, I will tell you, according to IMDb, it did no favors for either movie because if you went and saw this, you would also be seeing Blazing Saddles.
Ah, sure.
Which
yeah,
both great known, right? Fit. That is Whiplash. That I can't imagine. Like, I don't know what would be worse. Like, or not even worse because gosh, I'll sit through Blazing Saddles anytime. But you go to see Blazing Saddles, and then Badlands follows it up, or you go see Badlands and Blazing Saddle breaks out.
I would go that, or I would go Badlands first.
Yeah.
I think if I were going to have to sit through both of them or force somebody to see them, yes, I would start with Badlands. I think you want to end with Dom DeLuise. I think definitely that's the way to go.
Yeah, it was fascinating to watch this as someone who came to Malick later. I actually think Tree of Life was my first Malick, maybe. I mean, Thin Red Line was early. I don't think I saw that before Tree of Life. So Tree of Life is my entry to Malick, and then he's everything that comes after, which I like to certain degrees. I actually do like The Wonder.
I do too.
I think it's a beautiful movie. And then I really like Hidden Life. But like I said, I mean, story gets lost in that. I don't think that people don't perform for him, by the way. I think people perform for him. And then he goes and makes whatever he's that. And hacks, cuts it up, and in his mind, they're tone poems. So for me, Tree of Life works really well if I think about it as a prayer. That's probably my connection with that movie, and why his other ones kind of fall a little flat from the other. Hidden Life does it to at least a more obvious and thorough line. You know, there's a story there you can follow. Even if
there's a traditional narrative there. There's a traditional narrative there, absolutely.
Yeah, but Badlands, I knew it was I knew the story was. I'm like, how does Malick work with a traditional narrative? And it's like, oh, really well. Really well because you can do this world, and sometimes it's very impactful, and sometimes that approach of a movie that just wants you to feel something at that point and not worry about the overarching story so much that works for you. But sometimes there's just something said for a really good story about two people that also understands there's ways to treat these people like actual human beings with depth and souls that they don't even quite understand themselves. Sissy Spacek's character does not really understand what's going on inside of her. No, Malick understands that, and that's why we understand how much Kit understands how much of what he does is, an act, because he's styling himself after an actor. There's a scene where they're driving in the car, they're talking about actors, and you see how informed they are, what they see on their maintenance. Which he does not do anymore. Yeah,
it's a tight movie. There's not, for all of these lyrical language sort of detours the movie takes visually. It feels really tight. If you've only ever heard Mickey Somebody's Love Is Strange and Dirty Dancing, you have not seen the best use of that song in any movie ever until you get around Badlands. That's a sequence that stuck with me the very first time I saw the movie. This is great. We're just gonna stop and watch them dance. Barefoot in nature, yes, because they believe they're Adam and Eve. Yeah, I buy it. Yeah, sure, let's do this. I'm with you. Let's go, Terry.
Well, he already has to working with cinematographers, captures the eyes landscape so well too.
Yes.
Nomadland last year. Just Nomadland before Nomadland, thoughts. I mean, the way they capture the landscape are such beautiful shots. Even back to one of the distant thunderstorm and just lightning crackling across the sky, and that's honestly not just so well is this nature photography reminder that we are sharing the planet. We're renting a room on a planet that's going to outlive us all. We're going to swallow it by that one day. What we've done is not going to be remembered ever. Yeah,